tell you stories prior to the Carolina Storyteller. Written by me, produced by me, edited by me, starring me, horribly marketed by me. I'm 2 years in and I don't have a team. If you want to support the podcast, please go to patreon.com/Carolina Storyteller and subscribe. We've got 3 tiers, and from those 3 tiers, you can get early episodes, exclusive content, and if you go for the big bucks, we'll even let you be part of the live audience. Stay spooky, my friends.
Hello, folks. I am Jonathan Phoenix, the Carolina Storyteller, coming to you with a special holiday episode. And for the holiday episode, I got my guest, my friend, Larry Jerro from all the way out on the West Coast. Larry hosts the Civil Rhetoric podcast, which I've been a guest on a couple of times. We've had some great discussions, and I couldn't think of anybody better to be here for today's episode. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to finally be a part of the Storyteller podcast. Like you mentioned before, we've had an opportunity to discuss 2 separate topics before. Looking forward to getting into something, especially that's a little bit more festive and about the season. So let's rock and roll.
Oh, man, it's great. So for those of you who don't know, Larry's podcast, Civil Rhetoric, which is available on Spotify, takes a deep dive into basically matters that, really are a little controversial, and we try to get to the core of what people are thinking about it. We've done horror, but you've also done masculinity, power. You've done what are some other ones? Because I've listened to a few of your episodes. You had that one lady on there, and she's been on like 3 or 4 episodes, and I can't remember right now.
Yeah, that's more than likely. That's Zyra. Yeah, we've gone the entire gambit. Zyra's an amazing guest. She talks about her survivor story. We pretty much like to get into anything that's typically uncomfortable, kind of the conversations you have when no one else is around with your friends and your family, and you're like, well, hey, how about this one topic? And then we kind of take a deep dive into it. And the main goal of the podcast is to remain civil while discussing something that's uncomfortable. The next series that we have coming up, I'm actually going to end up inviting you on again. It's going to focus a little bit more on in terms of taking the masculinity role and applying it to relationships, and how there are different aspects of femininity, including feminism, as well as hypermasculinity, which is like that red pill ideology, and the detriment that it's been having to relationships in American society lately. So we're taking some deep dives, and that sounds like we're gonna have fun with that one. We had fun with masculinity, so I think masculinity in relationships we'll have fun with, especially given the divide between the two of us based on geography, age, and just where we've been in our lives. I think it gives us a good back and forth. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. I agree.
That's going to be fun.
No, I agree. When I was actually putting the topic together, I had you in mind. Like, you popped up right away. I was like, yeah, this is going to be another episode. So
it's going to be that one, and then he's going to be like, okay, we're coming in and we're talking about old school wrestling. That'll be the other one that you dragged me in on, old school wrestling.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Little fact for everybody
especially recently.
Yeah. For everybody that doesn't know, little fact, I was a huge wrestling fan back in the 90s and 80s and early 2000s. Not so much nowadays. It's just kind of, I feel like I've outgrown the WWE, unfortunately. But, sometimes I still go back and I look. The other day I watched the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker Hell in a Cell match just for nostalgia purposes, and realized that whole pay-per-view was horrible, but that match was pristine. But side table the wrestling and side table the discourse, we want to talk about the season, Christmas. Larry, what does Christmas mean to you?
For the most part, oddly enough, this is going to be a bit of a shocker to you. I was raised Jewish. So, yeah. Both of my parents are Jewish. I'm not adopted or anything like that. We're not like, offshoot Black Israelites or anything like that. It's just my family, originally from Ethiopia, pushed out of Ethiopia. Actually, originally from Spain, pushed out of Spain into Ethiopia, out of Ethiopia into Israel. And I actually still have quite a bit of family in Tel Aviv. So when I got here to the States, I was born and raised here. My mom was not. It was a little bit of a shock because I was the only kid on my block that didn't have a Christmas tree. So as I got a little bit older, I started, bugging and prodding enough to where she started getting a Christmas tree to me. So to me, Christmas, oddly enough, was a time of uncomfortability because everybody else was talking about Christmas stories and Santa Claus, and I'm like, well, what is that? So up until about, I would say until about the fourth or fifth grade, I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants and trying to figure out what Christmas was. I'd watch all the Rudolph movies. I'd watch all the, the little claymation movies and stuff like that. But to me, ultimately, it ended up becoming about family and just being together. And then at the time, being an only child, just being around friends and their family and looking and observing their traditions. So it was a time of happiness for, like, in short, to make a long story short.
Well, see, that's one of the things about Christmas. I don't attain to religion anymore. I was raised um, First Baptist, then Presbyterian. Almost became a youth pastor. Then I became Baptist again, and then I just completely kind of washed my hands with the church. I found some things in the church itself that I didn't like, hypocrisy. But that's not to say that that's all churches, and that's not to say that it's all Christianity. But it was not for me, and I stepped away from it for quite a while. But Christmas has always been a big thing with me. Um, I grew up in foster care, so it was a time when I got to see my family, my whole family, and I got to, share with them. And of course, there were presents, but it was, you know, more of the food and the celebration and the happiness and the laughter from people who were usually downtrodden. And it's really interesting when you look at Christmas in a historical context, it's not always been the birth of Christ. The celebration that happens during now is actually based on very pagan traditions. Um, the tree, for instance, is very much a pagan druidic thing. The gift giving, that's more Norse. Papa Noel was actually from, what is he? Is he German, Swedish, Scandinavian?
I
He's from
believe it's
somewhere over
German.
there.
I do believe it's
Yeah.
German.
These characters and all of it kind of got drug in. One of the big things about the season is that December 21st, that's the halfway point for Earth's rotation in the northern hemisphere around the sun. That's technically going to be the longest day of the year, the darkest day of the year. So Christmas technically originally was a celebration of us coming making it halfway through the darkest part of what was our year and moving towards the light. It was, this celebration of things, if you think about it. So for me, Christmas has always been this celebration that things are, that, you know, there are joyous things to celebrate. It was family, it was friendship, it was, enjoying each other's company and enjoying the lives that we have with each other. Yeah, the presents are nice, but in the end, the presents aren't the real gift that we get at Christmas. You know,
That's interesting, especially for me since presents were never really a central aspect of Christmas. It's actually really uplifting to kind of hear that the actual underlying goal of it is not to say, hey, how many things do you have under the tree, versus, hey, these are people that you don't necessarily get to see all the time, and allowing yourselves to kind of reestablish and then reaffirm certain connections. So that's actually a pretty awesome way of looking at it.
I think that's the beauty of Christmas is that it's supposed to be, you know, it's, when you're little and when you're young and you're raised in a Christmas celebrating household, you kind of get the idea that it's the joy of giving. I mean, the joy of receiving, because all you can think about is writing your letter to Santa and waiting for Santa. But as you get older, and as a father, this is one of the greatest things, and I hope you get to do this sometime soon too. Is getting the gifts, wrapping them, and putting them under the tree, and especially on Christmas Eve, telling the kids you got to go to bed, you got to go to bed, and spend all night long setting up these things. I have put together doll houses, I have put together Power Wheels toys, I have laid out train sets, I have set up marble characters, you name it, I've done it on Christmas Eve. with the hopes that when my children come down Christmas morning, or well, came out of the room Christmas morning and saw it, um, they would just be, just see their eyes just light up in happiness. And we were so eager for it, as when my children were younger, that we'd be up at 5, 6 o'clock on Christmas morning, and they'd still be asleep. And we used to do this thing where one of us would get outside the room and throw a stuffed animal at one of them in the bed to try and wake them up. Just go, "Bah, didn't do anything. Shh, quiet, 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 quiet." So it's literally that's and it becomes, you realize that the joy of the season isn't getting, it's giving. That's where the
I'm
that's
really
where the
looking forward to that.
that's where the fun is. So I can't wait for you to have that experience, because that's gonna be awesome for you. Um, Now, with that being said, do you think Christmas has become overly commercialized over the years?
I think that can be said for each and every holiday, but especially for Christmas. One thing I've actually been getting a lot of my feed, like especially on like my YouTube and my Reddit, is I've been noticing there's a lot now of Walmart, I believe it is, pushing like, oh hey, there are a lot of children that are in the system. Why don't you come here and buy gifts for them? And then what we'll do is we'll give these gifts to them. And to me, I think the concept and the idea of it is great. It just kind of it hurts my heart that there's this multi-billion-dollar corporation that's taking more from people who are entering into harder times as the economy starts to fail and different things like that occur, and they're like, take a little bit more money and put a little bit more into this machine so that we can give this to these children who are needy. And unfortunately, like what it does is it just kind of starts to tug at your heartstrings in order to make you spend more money, when these people are also not paying their employees enough to be working these odd hours, these late hours, in order to make these things happen. And like that to me kind of hurts. So to answer your question, I think that the way things are now, at least in America, at least in California, it's overly commercialized to a point to where you have people now risking their life and limb over gifts, over things, over monetary value. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, it really is to that point, unfortunately. Um, in fact, I found that I myself, during the Christmas season, I'm working overtime. I'm struggling to, make sure ends meet, because I'm trying to make sure that I get the gifts that my kids will. Even though my kids are older, I'm still wanting to give them a great Christmas. I'm still wanting to do for them, and I'm still working harder just to make that happen. And I don't work at Walmart. I work, I work in private security at a data center, where I make a decent amount of money. I don't make minimum wage. I make far above that, but I'm still, having to struggle with meeting what the expectation is of Christmas, which is where I want to get into today's story. We're going to go back in time a little bit. You don't mind, do you?
Not at all. Let's get in the
Okay,
time
so
machine. I got my
let's
DeLorean.
hit in the time machine. We're going to go back to 1914. Okay, we're going to go to actually France in 1914. Um, any idea what we might be doing there, or what might be going on at the
So
time?
is that not the revolution?
No, this is
Um,
actually much worse. Um, in France, or I'm sorry, in France, Germany, in 1914. We're in the early stages of World War One. There
oh
have been
yeah,
two conflicts to be
yeah.
considered a world war, and this one was by far probably the most gruesome. Remember that it was in World War One that we started inventing unique and special ways of killing people in horrible, horrible fashion. So this is a very horrible time in human history, and we're going to go right to the front lines and talk about something that happened on the week before, but more importantly, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. A week before Christmas, an unofficial truce kind of was called, mainly because they were out of ammo. They had become so efficient at throwing ammo at one another that supply lines, I mean, it was cold, it was snowing. They didn't have the logistics planned for this kind of a battle. Everybody had jumped in. So getting the weapons to some of these front lines was just hard. So an unofficial truce was called. And so you had men, and this was trench warfare at the time. So they're down in these trenches, and there's what's called no man's land between the two trenches, where basically if you go out into it, you're going to die. They're going to fire weapons at you. It's just horrible. It's been bombarded, it's been shot up, but for some strange reason, it's become an eerie calm. And during this time, at times during the night, some of the men will start singing carols in one trench, and the carols were answered in another trench. So then we get to Christmas Eve, and more importantly, Christmas morning, which is when we get what's known as the Christmas miracle of World War One. And it began early, it began late on Christmas Eve, but carried into Christmas Day, where the men began to sing Christmas carols together from either side of the trench. And within the middle of this truce, these soldiers who have been fighting and killing each other for months began to come together and celebrate. And they shared food, and they shared different delicacies. They made each other souvenirs and gifts, you know, celebrating just this day of peace and this day of love and this day of giving. The next day they played football together, and they sung songs and got drunk and sang and just celebrated life for a day. And two armies were able to put their differences aside for almost 48 hours and just be human beings. Whoever the war was being fought for, it wasn't them in particular. They were just soldiers. They were all guys out there doing a job, and they realized that that guy over there is the same as me. We're doing a job. And they celebrated Christmas together in the cold and in the snow with little amongst them. They were able to share with one another and, have this moment of togetherness in the midst of one of the darkest times in human history. It was like a beacon of light. And while it was never repeated as strongly as it was in 1914, the truce did come back in 1915, kind of, but it never came back through the end of the war. There was never another Christmas truce like the Christmas truce of 1914. And there were never a period where the soldiers they laid down their arms and they just came together. They sang carols, they celebrated, they ate, they drank, they talked to each other, even though they were from different countries, even though they didn't all they bridged whatever gaps they could to be friends for that one day, because to them that was what was more important than this war.
Man, that is so unfortunately beautiful. It's yeah, like it's a very somber idea that you have these corporations, or at the time you have these countries that are basically telling you you need to go kill this other person because we tell you to, they don't agree with what we say. And the actual soldiers who are going through all of this just this terrible time, they were able to find the humanity in each other and actually lay down their arms, as you mentioned, and still, break bread with each other, which must have been like one of the most, like, honestly, a lot of times there's this old show I used to watch called Yu Yu Hakusho, and one of the guys went completely bad because he went through something called the Bible Black, which was looking at all the worst atrocities that humanity had ever committed. And what this sounds like is that was the reverse of it. It was an opportunity to see like the light and the beauty that's in humanity, because despite this horrific time, they were able to figuratively and literally find that Christmas miracle, to find that light that went from, being the darkest times in human history to actually being something that you can look at as a human being, no matter where you're from, and say, you know what? That's a testament to how strong our will is and how strong our actual nature is, because it wasn't they were being told to kill someone. They had an opportunity to just relate, and then they had to get back to killing each other a couple days later.
Yeah,
Still,
so understand, December 26th, the bullets did start flying again. But it was like you said, it was a moment in history where humanity literally showed its greatest strength is to empathize and love. You know, this is darkest days of history by far. Well, some of the darkest days of history. We could get into World War II, but we're not going to do this. But nobody there is having a good time. But they were able to put aside their differences as a person, as a people, and just say, hey, you know what? For today, you're a person, I'm a person. Let's just be people and enjoy the day. And that is the capacity that humanity is. And that's really what I think about when I think about Christmas is all the times that, people have shown that kind of ability to overcome our differences and have compassion, get into the spirit of giving, show that we love and care for each other. It's a very the moral of that story is that no matter what you think, that other person that you're looking at is still human and they still have the capacity for the things that you have the capacity for. They still have the same desires and needs that you have. And sometimes showing kindness is the greatest thing that you can do. And those days, I'm sure that kindness went a long way for many a soldier who were missing home, they were missing family, they were missing children, and they sat there and not having their family were invited into another family basically. Were invited to be part of something with others. They created something to help them all remember what they were missing and what they loved and what they cared for. And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It is depressingly beautiful,
Yes.
like you said, but it is absolutely beautiful and it is absolutely great representation of what Christmas can be if you let it.
Agreed. It's like this odd juxtaposition while it goes from where in this time where it was basically horrific that people were able to still find their humanity to now where it's people fighting and shooting and stabbing each other over getting a flat screen TV. Like really puts things in perspective, man.
And that's why I love the story so much. It does put it in perspective. Um, you know, I know in the time that we live in, things aren't the greatest. You know, but hopefully, especially for you and your family this season, and for everybody that's listening, hopefully we all find the time to show kindness and generosity, and remember that gifts isn't really what it's about. It's about giving and being together and about celebrating each other as a family. And if you're Christian, it's about the birth of Jesus Christ. And as Ricky Bobby said in Talladega Nights, little baby Jesus in his golden swath with his cute curly hair or whatever he said. I can't remember. It was Talladega Nights, and I may have been under the influence while watching it. I don't know. Will Ferrell's a genius. What can I say? But that's the spirit of Christmas that you should embrace. Not the commercialism, not the let's go to Walmart and spend money because that's what we've got to do, but the let's be with our family and our friends and let's just enjoy what time we have because you don't know next year might not be another Christmas.
Yeah, and I mean at the pace that things are going now within America as well as in the rest of the world, actually, especially the rest of the world, there's no telling that tomorrow's even going to be something that's promised to us. So I would agree wholeheartedly. And if you wouldn't mind, one initiative that I'm actually working on myself, I might put it out there to anyone who's willing to join in. Speaking of the foster care system, I became aware a couple of years ago that the majority of foster children, as they're going from one location to another, have to put their clothes, their belongings inside of trash bags because most of them do not have duffel bags, backpacks, or even just luggage to move themselves from one location to the next. And there are programs out there that accept free duffel bags, carrier bags, that so that these kids can actually have a little semblance of still remaining and sitting in their humanity versus carrying their belongings in a trash bag. And I know to most people it might not sound like much, like, well, it gets them to where they need to go to, but the type of mind state that you're in, to where your life is inside of a trash bag versus it's in something as simple as a duffel bag, goes a very long way. And I know we all have extra luggage, extra duffels, extra backpacks that we kind of just have sitting around the house with no major use. Donate that to a foster care facility, donate that to anyone you know who's in social work so that they can pass this along to these children so that they can have some semblance of their own humanity and also have some semblance of ownership, because that is very important. Even if you look at people who are on the streets living there, they at least have a shopping cart, they at least have some type of means of something that they own. And I think giving that to these children can actually go a long way towards helping them maintain that someone actually does care. Because a lot of times, especially in America, I can speak for California specifically, that these children are forgotten and they get lost in the system and they deserve to have some type of light shed on them. And yes, I get it. It's really great that you can sign a card at Walmart and buy them a G.I. Joe or a Pokemon or something like that. But to actually give these children something that they'll be able to actually have and use can go a very long way to letting them know that the world, that someone does actually care about them and their well-being.
You know, I agree with that 100%. And because it is this season, I can definitely tell you that as a foster kid, that's 100% something that, you know, uh, they say, oh yeah, buy them a toy, buy them a shirt, buy them a nice jacket, a pair of pants, shoes, a backpack, um, a nice book bag. You know, um, a lot of times they don't get these things. They don't get something really nice. They get the cheap stuff. They get the stuff that somebody's willing to give them. They get hand-me-downs. They get Goodwill. So if you're going to donate to a foster child or to an orphanage, you know, um, get them something nice. Don't worry about getting them just a toy. Get them something that could be useful for them. Yes, they do need toys, and I'm not saying don't get them a toy, but a nice jacket if you're in a cold climate, a nice pair of shoes, a nice pair of pants can be just as rewarding as the new Transformer or the next GI Joe or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figure or even a video game system. Um, Believe it or not, these kids they don't have a lot, and a lot of times they're not given a lot, and they are bounced around in the system. They do get kind of mixed around, and a lot of toys isn't going to help them going from place to place to place, but there are other things that they can get that can be very helpful. And thank you for
Agreed.
bringing that up.
Oh, no problem. It's something I noticed because like my wife, she was really big on like, okay, the dog that we get, let's adopt a dog. She even wants to adopt older dogs so that we can give them at least some semblance of a life before they move on. And to me, like when I look at these things, I think about it, it's like every year, I see all the advertisements for, hey, adopt a dog, hey, adopt a cat, hey, visit your local animal shelter. And I mean, even to this day, I've actively searched, I've actively looked. I have no idea where an orphanage is. I have no idea, where all of these children are. All of these children who are basically just subjugated to the system. And the system, which wastes so much money, versus putting more time, energy, and effort into making these children productive members of society so that they can grow up and have families, so that that cycle isn't perpetuated. And being that, I was born in an area that wasn't, very high on anyone's social economic ladder, and seeing the results and then what that does to communities. I think that like spending an extra second or two just to think about those less fortunate than you and not just those that you see, holding cups outside of a store asking for change. I mean, like the less fortunate who are actually helpless, the children of the world who are basically left with nothing. And it's unfortunate that in a country that is so rich and wealthy, we allow these type of travesties to kind of just occur as if it's okay. That's why I know for myself, my wife and I, and then like within our circle of friends, we at least attempt to try to actually put a dent in things by helping as much as we can, whether it's, volunteering at a soup kitchen, as cliche as that sounds, versus actually just spending time and reading stories, or just spending time and just letting these people know that we see them, because a lot of times they feel invisible and forgotten, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is the perfect time of the year to bring these things up and bring these things to light because um, you know, you see them on the street and you see them, it's even in small town like Monk's Corner, which isn't that big. We're starting to gather a homeless population because the world is just it's getting darker and worser as far as the system goes. So it is up to us as people, us as human beings, to step up and make sure that we remember that we're supposed to take care of each other and we're supposed to help each other. Part of society is supporting one another, and not everybody can do it alone. So you need to actually, no one can do it alone. It really is impossible to do it all alone. So you need to make sure that you're out there and you're helping those less fortunate and that you're watching out for those less fortunate and that you realize how fortunate that you are with what you have. And always look to your neighbor and be like, maybe I've got a little bit extra that I can give. Maybe I've got something that I can do, and it doesn't have to be money. We have a neighbor here who's a little bit older, and we'll go over and help her with her cable or her TV or with her lights. I've got a strapping 20-year-old young man downstairs that I can happily turn into a worker anytime I need to. And that right there is just an example of something that you can do for someone else. It doesn't have to be going all the way out and hunting down. Like, yes, we want to help these people that are lost, but help your neighbors, help your friends, help people that need help, that might miss the thing. But if everybody is giving this season, then maybe nobody will go without.
Yeah, and I think that, in all honesty, when you think about all the life goals and things that people say and talk about, especially in social media, when you step back and you take a look at things and you understand that, maybe we're not in the position to say, well, I can give hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, to organizations, corporations, or to someone individually to help change their status in life. But we can take a minute and give a little bit of time. Or even if we can't give time, we can give a little bit of recognition, because that does go a long way. Because a lot of times I know these people feel invisible. And I know a lot of young men kind of suffer and go through this as well, because they feel like no one really sees them, and they have to kind of internalize the all of the angst, all of the anxiety, the uneasiness and things that come from the world, when we can just actually look and just say, "Hey, I see you. I acknowledge you." And just that simple small acknowledgement does go a long way. And even if you feel like you're not doing enough or you feel like you could be doing more, just doing something, like really just doing something, it's a major difference versus zero. I mean, if you multiply anything by zero, the answer is still zero. However, if you can multiply something by one or two or three or even zero point 0.5, it's greater than zero. And then that does help someone. That does go a long way. And I'm really thankful that you took the time to actually put together an episode on the season, and you decided to include me in that, because it's something that's actually very near and dear to my heart, and it's something I try to incorporate in my life year round. Because realistically, I understand that I got lucky. I got lucky because of circumstances. I got lucky because, I had good friends, I had a decent family, and there's multiple routes I could have gone down to where I would have been one of the people who were hoping and wishing that somebody would see me or acknowledge me. And I realize that when I look into my life, especially like considering like I'm, not the nicest person in the world. I'd be the first one to admit that. And I think it's a way for me to help regain my own humanity, because work, because just life and circumstances make it real easy for me to forget that. But having the opportunity to just give back, however great or small it is, it does remind me of my own personal humanity, and it allows me to connect to my fellow man. and woman, just to be politically correct. Like, it allows me to feel better about myself selfishly, like 100% selfishly. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, if for no other reason than to feel good about yourself, taking care of another, doing these things during the season will make you feel wonderful about yourself. And I'm reminded of a lyric. You said something about a dollar, things like that. I'm reminded of a lyric from a song by a Tribe Called Quest. No, I'm sorry, Arrested Development, not a Tribe Called Quest. It was Arrested Development. It's a song called Mr. Wendell. And
Yes.
it's here, have a dollar. In fact, now, brother man, here, have two. $2 means a snack for me, but it means a big deal to you. Um, that song is one that has stuck with me since the '90s. I love Arrested Development. I don't know why I mistakenly called them the Tribe Called Quest because I'm probably thinking about the scenario right now. I don't know why, but it's no more simpler than that. Something that means absolutely nothing to you may mean a huge amount to someone else. So if you're out there um, and you see someone that's in need and you have the ability to help this Christmas, please help. Um, we're going over our 30-minute time, so I'm going to start wrapping it up here. Larry, do you have anything else to add, real quick?
Honestly, just thank you. I mean, just thank you so much, Jonathan. I'm gonna actually get an opportunity to take this conversation, um, put that inside myself, and just feel good the rest of the day, because it reminds me that there are good people out there. And having an opportunity to talk with you, I had no idea, that you grew up in this foster system, and it's amazing to see the person that you have become. So I'm just like, I consider myself lucky to be able to count you as a friend, if you don't mind me using that word. So just thank you.
No, Larry, we're definitely friends. We are definitely friends, and that's why I picked you for this one because I knew you would love the story and you would enjoy the conversation because you like taking a deep look at people, my friend, and looking at what's underneath. And yeah, there are a lot of horrible things about people, but we also have the capacity for goodness, for greatness. And that capacity is in our capacity to love, our capacity to be kind, our capacity to be empathetic, and our capacity to give to one another. Um, so, with that being said, this is my guest, Larry Jerro, again from Civil Rhetoric. It is an excellent podcast. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, please go and listen. There are some very deep takes. He has some wonderful guests. He gets this guy out of South Carolina that's just hilarious. Um, you should really listen to those episodes. But no, he really does have great guests, and they really do get deep into things. And I've had the pleasure of working with him a couple of times, and I'm hoping to work with him several more. Um, Merry Christmas to you all. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Um, whatever you celebrate this time of year, I hope that you and your family have the greatest of the season. I hope that you are all healthy. I hope that you are all well, and I hope to see you all for the 2024 season in January. Larry, again, thanks so much for being here with me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Looking forward for any time that we have a chance to connect and talk. You can count me in. It's always a good time.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing a lot more of that, so you'll probably see this guy's face a few more times. That's all for the show for tonight. Thank you to Larry, and thank you to all of you for listening. And stay spooky, my friends.